Question 19, Honourable Member Mr Morehouse.
Thank you, Mr President. I would like to ask the Chairman of the Office of Fair Trading what transitional support is in place to help tenants and landlords resolve issues created when the extended protection for tenants ends on Saturday the 26th of December 2020. Thank you.
Calling the Chairman of the Office of Fair Trading, Mr Perkins, to reply.
Thank you, Mr President, and I thank the Honourable Member for Arbory, Castletown and Malew, Mr Moorhouse, for his question. The period of protection for tenants was extended following the Tenants Governor's signing of a proclamation on the 26th of June 2020, bringing an end to the state of emergency in the Isle of Man. Some secondary legislation made during the emergency period continued in operation for a further 6 months, including the Emergency Powers Coronavirus Protection from Evictions Regulations 2020. So in line with the answer I gave to a question from the Honourable Member in this place in October 2020, which the Honourable may remember, the OFT issued a media release on the 4th of December 2020. And to reinforce what I said in the release, landlords should make reasonable allowances to take into account the financial circumstances of tenants who have lost income due to the effects of the ongoing pandemic. A balanced approach is needed, taking into consideration the challenging circumstances faced by both the island's tenants and the landlords equally. The OFT Consumer Advice Service deals with inquiries from tenants concerning their rights and obligations in general, including inquiries regarding evictions. Since the period of protection for tenants was ended, the OFT has been contacted by a surprisingly low number of tenants, specifically seeking advice concerning their rights and obligations as regards protection from eviction. This number was around 20 by mid-October and has not risen significantly since then. Landlords who contact the OFT are usually advised to obtain their own legal advice, as they are in business, and the OFT is a provider of consumer advice and is generally limited to consumers, i.e. tenants in this case. It should be noted that it is ultimately up to the courts to make judgments concerning evictions. Hopefully this stage should not be reached by reasonable tenants and reasonable landlords acting together. The OFT's debt counselling service is accessible to all island residents and provides a free, independent and confidential advice service. I would encourage anybody who is experiencing financial problems to make use of the service. So to summarise for the Honourable Member, there is no specific transitional arrangements, but the OFT Consumer Advice Service and its debt counselling service will continue to provide good advice and support to tenants when the extended period of protection no longer applies. Thank you, Mr President.
Supplementary question, Mr Morehouse.
Thank you, Mr President. Thank you, Chairman, for that reassuring answer. In terms of some tenants, there's still the issue of finding that clear solution going forward. You identified 20 tenants that had been in an issue in October. In terms of going forward, were they able to come up with solutions, or was that the last you heard of them?
Chairman, to reply.
I thank the Honourable Member. Well, we are continuing counselling some of these tenants, and hopefully the landlords and tenants can come to some agreement, because rather than part company, it's better for them to come to agreement and resolve the problem together. Otherwise, as I said before, it goes to the court, and really there are no winners and losers in that situation. So that's the situation we're at the moment. Thank you, Mr President.
Ms August Hanson.
Thank you, Mr President. Would it be fair to say, and just that the responsibility for the Emergency Powers Coronavirus Protection from Evictions Regulations 2020 having been with the Cabinet Office, that the responsibility for dealing with anybody that may have an issue following the falling of Regulation 6 would be now with the Office of Fair Trading and no longer with the Cabinet Office? Thank you, Mr President.
Chairman, to reply.
Thank you, Mr President, and thank the Member for Council for that supplementary question. Yes, the OFT has taken over in general with problems, but it has always been there for any consumer, not just for this particular problem. And we welcome anybody to come along for debt counselling and advice that is freely given. Thank you.
Mr Callister.
Thank you, Mr. President. I thank the OFT Chair for his written reply this morning. I am also surprised that only 20 people have actually contacted his sector. I was wondering if he's got any additional resources or advice or help on hand after the 26th of December and going into the new year, because I think many tenants will not actually know what position they're in until they start to receive notices, which will be after that period. Thank you.
Chairman to reply.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think part of the advice we've been giving tenants is to talk to your landlord and find out what the lie of the land is and try and come to some agreement. The OFT isn't the only organisation that actually gives free debt counselling. The Salvation Army also assist in that matter and can sometimes assist a little bit farther than the OFT financially, but that is up to the Salvation Army. Thank you, sir.
Honourable Member Mrs Christian.
Thank you, Mr. President. Would the chairman of the OFT be able to confirm if the Economic Recovery Group liaised with the OFT in relation to the emergency powers rent deferral ending on the 26th of December to establish the impact on individuals and businesses, both as tenants and landlords' perspective? And can the chairman give us an indication of the amount of businesses that this has affected, not just in individuals? Obviously, if you haven't got that at this time.
Chairman to reply.
Thank you, Mr. President. Unfortunately, I don't have that to hand, but if the Honourable Lady would allow me, I shall inform you about that at a later stage, if that's okay. Thank you.
Supplementary, Mr Callister.
Thank you, Mr. President. Can I ask the OFT Chair if there's any advice or a phone number or support available over the Christmas period, if possible?
Chairman to reply.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'll just bear with me 2 seconds. I'm not aware of any helpline at this point in time, but again, I will inform the honourable member if that's okay. Thank you.